John. And so now I welcome you everyone to our NEP seminar series. Today it's my real pleasure and honor to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Nathan Jenkins, who is not only a brilliant scientist, an exercise physiologist, and a nutrition coach, but also a great friend. Nathan received his bachelor's and master's in exercise science from UGA, University of Georgia in Athens. After that, he moved to the University of Maryland, where he obtained his PhD in exercise physiology under the mentorship of Dr. Jim Hackberg. After that, he moved to the University of Missouri as a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Biomedical Sciences under the mentorship of Dr. Laughlin, who's here in the audience. That was about 2010 or 2011?
2011, yep.
2011. And he, during that time as a postdoc, he interacted significantly with many trainees and with many faculty members across campus, many of which are here. I'm very pleased to see those. I was one of the trainees that was very fortunate and lucky to interact significantly with Nathan. We share an office, and I remember we had a giant whiteboard where we would write down all our ideas, our hypotheses, right? Our proposed experiments, timelines. And I can say that without doubt that as a result of my interactions with Nathan, I became a better scientist. During that time, we were tremendously productive. Nathan was super productive during that time. I did a quick PubMed search this morning. As a result of this 2.5 years of postdoc in the Laughlin lab, he published 31 papers. 31 papers. I don't know how Dr. Laughlin was able to keep up with 31 papers and submissions and so forth. But it's not surprising that as a result of this productivity, he was highly recruitable as a faculty member. And when a faculty position came open at UGA, he was selected as the top candidate. And so unfortunately, we lost Nathan. He moved back to UGA to start his independent research program as a assistant professor in tenure track. Successfully became associate professor with tenure. And it was about that time that he made the decision to start or to embark into some new adventures within the exercise and fitness industry that I'm going to let him tell us those adventures and stories with this very intriguing talk that is titled Plot Twist, Tenure Was Not the Final Chapter. So with that, please join me in welcoming back Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that so much. Yeah. Okay, well, gosh, thank you so much, Dr. Padilla. And it is truly, truly, truly an honor and a privilege to be with you all today. I've had the best time ever since I got in yesterday afternoon. It's been like a whirlwind of evening last night with dinner, and then so many great interactions and discussions today. And I'm just so appreciative. It's been too long. It's been, we keep saying 12 years that it's been since I've been back, but truly those times that Jami was just sharing, I honestly look back on that as some of the richest and most special times in my career, and really set the stage for me to to enjoy success at the next phase, and then everything else I've done. It was truly a formative time. So as I'll say maybe multiple times throughout this talk is for primarily for the trainees. This is for the PhD students and the postdocs, if there are any here, who aren't quite sure necessarily which direction you want to go with your career. There's many themes that will come up that are I'm sharing my story with you that in hopes that they are helpful in some way, shape, or form. But on the tail of what Dr. Padilla just shared, please know that you are, and you guys hear this all the time, probably from your own faculty. You hear it from visiting scholars who know the environment here. You're going to hear from me right now that you are in a really, really special being with so many people today. It's even more true now. And not least of which, for those of you who are working the new building or some new buildings, unlike Dr. Padilla and I, we had to traipse our rear ends all over campus to do our various experiments, which was actually not a bad thing. I actually enjoyed that. But you have lots of things housed in one or two locations, which is really wonderful. But just please don't let talk a little bit today about my career trajectory as it's been basically since I left Missouri. So to just give you a quick overview, I'm going to give you a brief professional history of like how I got here from the time I left Missouri to how I'm ending up talking to you today. Tell you a little bit about like the big question, why it is that I left academia in the first place, because I'll share with you that things were going really well. Why would somebody trade the security and safety of a tenured position for the uncertainty of the industry? Because I know that's something that gets talked about a lot as you guys are thinking about your career choices, which path you want to go down. What did academia prepare me for in my transition to my industry role? And then also in hindsight, both of these are sort of in hindsight, what academia did not prepare me for? What have I had to kind of learn on the job? And then lastly, I'll try to leave you with some parting pearls of wisdom, if you want to call it that, just some advice that I humbly offer to you as future professionals, okay? So the warning that I have for you to begin is, again, what I'm going to share with you all is just purely my own story. And my story is not one, as many of you who knew me back when I was here would have never predicted it playing out the way that it did. I think it's fair to say that Dr. Padilla, among others, would have described me as maybe the least likely people of faculty members to enter that track and then one day to somewhat, not abruptly, but surprisingly leave it. And so as such, what it is a series of events, a series of circumstances, a series of opportunities where things just kind of aligned and ended up making some decisions that were the best decisions I felt like I could make with the opportunities that I had and the information that I had at the time, okay? So with that, the warning is, I'm not sure that I'm going to leave you with anything. It's like, oh, here, go do this. You know, does that make sense? So I want to give that caveat from the very beginning. But again, I'm going to share the story in hopes that maybe there's some elements of it that are helpful for you all, kind of making decisions regardless of what phase you are. Again, primarily, this is targeted towards the students. So very briefly, and Dr. Padilla just did a very kind and flattering job of describing my academic history. So I'm going to be very brief, as I knew he would. I knew he would embarrass me. But in my undergraduate days, I was an exercise science major at the University of Georgia. I'm from the Metro Atlanta originally, raised a UGA Bulldog fan. So I was very excited to be able to go to that university for my undergraduate career. I started off as a political science major, which lasted all of about 3 or 4 days. And I know I'm being facetious, but it was literally in that first semester that I said, okay, I need to do something else. So, from a very early age, going from I had a phase, as many of us did. We're going back to my childhood. I had a brief period, a couple times during my childhood of being an obese child, frankly, and then I got very into exercise and fitness and nutrition even as early as high school. So that's what I decided in my dorm room one afternoon. I was on the phone with my stepfather, who was a mentor to me. I said, I want to do this, and he said, okay, let's go for it. And so in that program, though, I was very fortunate to be exposed to academic research. A gentleman, a fantastic scholar and teacher by the name of Dr. Kevin McCulley, who some of you will know or remember me have met. He's at that time, he was just starting what became like this empire. Empire is not the word, but just this. It's received national recognition for sure. A program of actually specifically training undergraduates in research. He's done great things with his graduate trainees, but he always had 20, 30 undergraduates in his lab and just provided a very rich environment. I was very fortunate to catch the bug in his lab for this idea of research, that is, and I just watched him do his thing. He was the kind of faculty member, some of you all might recognize this type, you might know the type, these traits. What he would what he would do is walk around all day, specifically in his lab, look over the shoulder of students doing their experiments, see what's going on and make them really nervous. And then they would mess up and then he'd walk away and then the experiment would start going right again. But he would just walk around, ask questions and find the answer. And I was like, I want that guy's job. Okay. So just to set the stage for early on, these impressions that I had. So I worked with Dr. McCulley for a while. I stayed on at UGA for my master's. A Master of Science in Exercise Science, Exercise Physiology, focusing at the time on exercise performance. My first publication was the effects of low doses of caffeine on endurance cycling performance. So that was a really cool, kind of fun area. But I knew that I didn't want to do sport performance and ergogenic aid type research for a career. So as I went at the master's for me, and I don't know if there's any master's students here, but if there are, master's is a good time, in my opinion, to decide, do you want to continue with research? Dip your toe in the water, get a taste for it. Well, I got that taste for it at kind of, I call it a professional level, which I'll define as producing a publishable outcome, a publishable paper at the end. and said, yeah, oh yeah, PhD. I knew from early on that I wanted to pursue a PhD, like an undergrad. Got confirmation of that during my master's. Let's go. All right. So then I said about like, okay, I was always interested in cardiovascular physiology, wanted to do something kind of clinical, maybe a little bit mechanistic. So I'm going to condense this here, not give my whole story, but PhD was mainly in human cardiovascular exercise physiology with somewhat of a mechanistic focus. And then coming here for my postdoc, wanted to get some exposure to working in animal models and do a bit more, even more mechanistic work, but always with this focus on translation. Really has been always interested in doing things with clinical relevance, but also providing mechanistic insight along the way. Although that search 12 years ago, but actually called 14, 15 years ago, led me to the University of Missouri. That search has led many of you here to the University of Missouri. I continue to think you're in the right place, right? Okay, so moving on. Well, to touch on a little bit about what I did in the context of, I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead a little bit to lessons learned of maybe why some aspects of one aspect in particular of the academic route, particularly the PI at an R1 type university like Missouri, like Georgia, may not in some ways have been the best fit for me, or where I found difficulty. Actually began in something that what I would describe and would have described at the time as something that was very, very good, which is that I kind of jumped around a lot. And at least when somebody would look at my CV and when reviewers of grants they're going and looking for things to ding you on, they were trying to ding the investigator. Or how are you going to ding somebody with, just to be objective about it, coming out of the University of Missouri, most of us at that time and continue to this day, very productive in terms of number of publications. But you look at something like, okay, so putting up the cover page of the first project the paper that came from the first project that I was involved in the Laughlin lab. And just to summarize it, the combined effects of exercise, independent combined effects of exercise training, metformin therapy, which is the first line pharmacologic medication for diabetes, and the combination on adipose tissue inflammation in a rodent model of metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes, which many of you will be familiar with. Really cool opportunity for me to get to kind of, well, Dr. Laughlin and I spoke early on, what can be a good kind of niche for me within this broader program you've got working on, the adipose tissue inflammation, the impact of these different things on the circulating environment, again, with that mechanistic insight as well and clinical insight as well. That was a great project for me to do. And meanwhile, so that's my first publication, love from University of Missouri, love that paper, and it's fun for me to reminisce by putting it up there on the slide, to be honest. To continue that reminiscence, our second postdoc, as we like to call it, the evening shift, we would come up here to the School of Medicine, work with Dr. Paul Fidel, and Dr. Padilla and I had something in common, which was we came from human clinical cardiovascular physiology labs. He had already established this collaboration a couple years prior, I think, 2009, 2010 or so, and I was kind of able to dovetail with that, bring some of my own interests and I guess expertise to that collaboration. A couple months later, published that paper looking at some hemodynamic forces on markers of vascular damage in humans. Okay, and it was really cool for me at the time. Those papers were published in the span of a couple months. But look at, like, in my mind, and I can make the argument that they're connected or under the same umbrella, but you look at it and they're completely different. Okay, so that's something. So that's going to speak to a character trait of mine, which is I like it all. Right? There's not a part of physiology that I don't enjoy. And again, at the University of Missouri, you're in a rich place to take advantage of that. And we always thought of ourselves as like we're our own limiting factors. Our time is our own limiting factor. The resources, the environment is rich and it's abundant. Okay, where did this come back to haunt me a little bit as a new PI? Again, it's that focus thing. So it's like, okay, this guy's got some cool papers, got some cool work. What's his agenda? You jump around from animal work to human work, from adipose tissue inflammation to hemodynamic forces. It's all in my mind, and we can make the art. It's all talking to the vasculature. It's all influenced on the vasculature. So, but still, what reviewers wanted to see, and you guys can, those of you who are more in this game still can speak to this, if this is still the current case or not. But what reviewers want to see is kind of like a laser-like focus on a particular research direction and like a continued line of productivity in that, and not a lot of other distractions. And so anyway, I'm just sharing that for perspective. It's like I think that is one of the big things that held me back from getting that major R01 grant or the equivalent. Okay. I'll say more about some of that stuff and the lessons learned in a few minutes. So again, in the UGA days, I had, this is going down to my faculty position in the early years as an assistant professor, and then in the last few years as a tenured associate professor. I had success in pretty much every area except that one, never landed that big NIH grant. I had multiple, and Dr. Potter and I were just talking about this. It's really fun, and a lot of us had that shared success in finding multiple small to medium-sized grants, mostly smaller ones, to support kind of individual projects, student projects. Great success in that arena, which is good. At the environment I was in, that was more than sufficient for tenure and all that, so that was never an issue. Was on several graduate students and thesis and dissertation committees, and I knew this would happen. One of the things that I did get at the University of Georgia that I never got anywhere else in my career, at least not to the same degree, was the opportunity to really mentor people and teach and develop my skills as an instructor and all of that. And so that was wonderful. Established strong collaborations both in the department. I still miss some dear colleagues in the nutrition department that I've established great collaborations with. And then, yeah, I guess there's numerous teaching accolades. You guys saw the CV, whatever. So the question then is, getting into like the essence of the talk here. If it was going so well, then why'd you leave? Well, there's going to be a couple parts to the answer to that. One is I had this opportunity that came up kind of out of nowhere, kind of just circumstantial, to I'm going to categorize it broadly as consulting. And that's going to be a big takeaway. Like, I'm going to talk about the specific type of consulting that I did and still do, which is nutrition coaching, and I consider myself like a performance physiologist for hire, basically. The first opportunity came through this company called RP Strength, and I just want to see a quick show of hands. Has anybody heard of RP Strength? Okay, a few of you all. Or Dr. Mike Israetel is the one of the two founders of the company, who's become, even since especially in the last couple of years, since my interactions with him have been winding down, he has become a very well-known figure, like in the YouTube scene, I guess. YouTube channel now has like over 3 million some subscribers, which is just an astronomical number to me. And he's just extremely good at communicating scientific content to a general audience in the area of like principles of hypertrophy and also sport nutrition. Okay, but before that, he and a gentleman named Nick Shaw, who I'll refer to in a minute, they started a company known as RP Strength again, and I was a customer of theirs first. At the time, this is like 2016, 2017, they had this product. It's basically a diet template, and the idea of the product, of the template, is to apply principles that have been well established in the sport nutrition space, but just maybe scale it out as a sellable product to the general population. And so just briefly, the way the templates worked was, it's a macronutrient-based nutrition program. You've got your totals for the day of protein intake, carbohydrate, fats, and a certain amount of vegetables to take in every day. And but it's strategically timed around your training sessions, where protein intake is steady throughout the day, carbohydrate is biased around the timing of your workout, and fats are pushed further away from your workout and maybe closer to bedtime for lots of reasons. So I've followed that program personally as I moved on from what I used to refer to as my exercise philosopher days, which is during my training, my PhD, my postdoc, where I thought about, experimented on, and wrote an awful lot about exercise, but didn't do as much of it as I probably should have myself. So moved on from that and got more serious about it. And the other piece of it was nutrition, okay? And so I had these just amazing results. At 35, 36 years old, this is just an anecdotal personal story. I ended up somewhere around 9 or 10% body fat after following this program for 3 months. And I was just so impressed with it that I reached out to the founders of the company, told them a little bit about who I was, to my background, and the idea was to do some kind of collaboration. To be honest with you all, I was looking for a source of industry funds. I thought that if they know that I was their customer, thought so highly of them, and the work that they had done, that maybe they want to work with me on something related to my area of interest, which was prevention/treatment, reversal of metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, and like a weight loss study. And it turns out they were extremely receptive to that. And so fast forward, I sent this email, which I'm not going to read, but I'll put it up there. Sent this email to them. Basically, this is my reach out email. Like, hey, here's who I am. Would you all want to collaborate on this? I'm not sure if this is something you're interested in, but if you ever are, then let's talk. Okay. And then it turns out I'm not going to go through all the back and forth of it all, but that ended up with, again, the CEO of the company. This is Mr. Nick Shaw. He ended up deciding to give both myself and actually a few other labs around the country with similar kind of things going on. Dr. Mike Roberts at Auburn being one recipient, and Dr. Andy Galpin in California. They basically, I think it was from the initiative, the first like impetus of what became their grant program was just me reaching out to them. Hey, would you guys want to give us some money? And they're like, actually, yeah, we want to do this, and we're going to do this far and wide. So they gave me the small grant, $5,000 to $10,000 to partner with them on a weight loss study. Nick came to campus. This is us in my lab at UGA. This is circa 2017. Nick is a very large bodybuilder type man, so I'm kind of angling to make sure that my arm looks like I can be in the same picture with him. But while he was there on campus, he spent a couple of days with us, gave him, kind of days like I had today, meeting a bunch of people, giving a talk. I just kind of floated the idea to him. I said, hey, Nick, I noticed that on your website, you also have a team of one-on-one coaches that clients can hire. And I also noticed that most of their expertise or focus areas for niche areas for your clients are things like bodybuilding and various strength sports like powerlifting, Olympic lifting, which I didn't have that much background in, but my background is like CrossFit and running and more functional fitness side of things. And it turns out that clientele at the time, this is again 7, 8 years ago now, was absolutely booming for them. Like that's who their main clientele was at the time. He goes, Nathan, I don't know why I didn't think about this before. Right now, we need you. Yes. And so like, I said, would you ever want help with this? He's like, yes, absolutely. And so that led to me becoming just kind of like on the side, a nutrition coach with this company. And so the way that started was, and let's see, what do I have next? Yeah, the way that started was, if you look here, this is the only graph, this is the only data I'm going to present all afternoon. If you look here, I'd start off, and this is all guesswork from memory, but roughly 10 clients by the end of that first year. And then it just kind of kept going. And I can talk about how this kept going, but I just kept getting more and more clients. The gist of it is clients would get good results, and they would talk to their friends, family, whoever would see their crazy transformations, and then they want to know, who are you working with? Can I hire them too? And so it's kind of organic word of mouth. Some social media marketing, which I'll talk about before, I'm terrible at. I'm awful at it. Don't come to me for advice on that. I hate it actually. But anyway, it was very much organic growth. Come 2020, I'm up to around 100 clients. And then of course, as with every other part of life, with the pandemic, the whole coaching thing really changed for me. The demand went crazy, to be honest. So there was 2 factors. One was the COVID weight gain, right? Which that first year or so, post-COVID, there was a lot of actually really good science on that, and the various health consequences of being confined at home and all that. Well, that was a big drive for more clients. And then also people had like stimulus money, and there was the economic boom at the time, which seems like a distant memory now, does it not? Yeah, question? Sure. I'll take it. Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. So at what point, the question is, if you guys didn't hear, is at what point in the process did I decide to charge more? You know what? So I am a sole proprietor. I do my own, but I'm partnering with this company. Doggone it, they're the ones that set the pricing. But we advocate for pricing increases, somewhere in here. But and the prices did eventually go up. I can't tell you exactly when, but yeah, that's right. And that's a good learning point. Like for in industry, you could see that it's basic economics, right? It's supply and demand. Obviously, demand was very, very high. Supply became, and I'll go ahead and maybe I already put it up. Once I reached 150 clients, I started, that's when I started making mistakes and missing emails, and that was, unacceptable to me. So I had to actually scaled back. I clamped the supply in the face of high demand. That's when I should have really pushed hard for the increase in price. But yeah, so that's my freak out 2021. And then also, meanwhile, around that same time, uh, found out that my little boy was on the way. And so at this point, I'm telling you, it's a series of events that can never predict exactly when things are going to happen and how things are going to line up. But yeah, so he's born in, my son Camden was born in March 2022. And it was probably about a year, maybe a year and a half before that even happened, that I'm thinking like, all right, if we do have children, then I can't keep doing this. Basically, it amounted to 2 full-time jobs and a newborn. Like, okay, I can't do that. So I've got to decide where am I going to scale back? Where am I going to pull back? And when I look at all the factors, the time, the money aspect for sure, and I've said shared with several of you guys today, this is not necessarily I'm not a money-driven person, but it's absolutely a factor. And the interplay between time and money, like the biggest thing that I got from the transition out of academia was a lot more control over my time, a lot more autonomy. I said it a few times today. I always bring it up when I tell the story. I was with my son every day for the first year of his life for as much as was needed and wanted for all of it. I didn't miss anything. I wasn't like going back to the office, right? There's no, again, that which is painful, right? I'm very, very fortunate that I was able to experience that. And regardless of the economics or whatever else, you can't put a price on that, you know? And it goes through to this day. I have quite a bit of autonomy over my time, and I can have the luxury and privilege and just opportunity I really spend about almost as much time as I want with him for the most part. So that's really, there's this intersection of your professional and personal life. To me, I don't like the whole thing of work-life balance, by the way. Quick aside, everything is just your life. And it's just about prioritizing things in ways that make sense for you. That's not a very eloquent way of putting it, but yeah, so that's what I've summarized basically the main reasons for the pivot, the introduction of essentially a new job without necessarily looking for one, but just letting it grow organically. And then also the family considerations. So why leave? But there's a little more to discuss as far as why the two opportunities that I had, being in a very fortunate position to have 2 full-time jobs, why pick academia to be the one that I leave? Well, in particular, there's the safety and security of tenure. And that was a big one. That's the one that took about a year, call it 18 months of just like thinking a lot about it and really being careful with that decision because it's a big one. Once you leave it, you can't get it back, right? And so here's what I found. I found very like a sincere and genuine motivation in the business world, which was that the harder I worked and the better my clients did, the better their results, the more that my reputation and my business, my income, the more it grew. It was kind of a one-to-one with the quality of service provided, the more that I try to go above, because I'm talking about in generalities right now of like the work and what it was, but the essence of coaching, and I think I've got a little bit where I could talk about this, but the essence of coaching, of successful coaching, is very, very similar to what makes an effective teacher, a successful teacher. That is genuine care for the student, or in this case, with coaching with the client, genuine care that they actually learn something. Dr. Booth and I were having, and Dr. Laughlin and Dr. Cradur and I were having an awesome conversation a little while ago about like the type of clients that I've tried to attract, and I'm absolutely not interested in the type of client that comes to a coach on January 1st looking to look great by spring break, in March, right? That's not, I'm interested in somebody working with me that maybe because here's the thing, whether you're in this field as in like the health science space or not, if you're a warm body and a pulse in 2025, you know that nutrition and fitness messaging is at least confusing, if not like out there online and social media and all that, if not kind of a freaking disaster train wreck kind of situation. And so there is a market. This is actually there's a market, there's an opportunity for people with actual credentials, it turns out, for clients who are looking for someone to help them gain clarity and somebody with authority, with the credentials. That turns out to have been very, very helpful for me, at least as a foot in the door. But then you actually got to care about them and their learning outcomes. It turns out that it's the same skill set that makes an effective teacher, right? And so I also found, just on like a personal level, helping me make that decision. You know, if I just keep doing what I'm doing, which is to go above and beyond to provide to do an excellent job for these people and really help them learn so that in a year's time, they don't need me anymore. I'm not interested in the chiropractor model where they keep renewing over and over and over again. In fact, I've had to like, quote unquote, fire clients. I said, no, yes, I would love your money, but I would actually love you more, right? Just genuinely tell them that. I'd rather you go on and be successful on your own. You're not allowed to hire me again. You know what to do, just go do it, right? And I'll give you that advice for free. So the more type of messaging you give that, the more success you have, and the money part kind of takes care of itself, to be honest. So, and I've kind of made this point already, but that's also in contrast to what I was finding in my tenured role, where the pay was more or less fixed, not completely, but more or less fixed. The effort reward relationship were largely uncoupled, particularly in the context of teaching, not necessarily in the grants game. If you get more grants, you can increase your salary and all that kind of stuff. But even that has a limit to it. Coaching created direct accountability and tangible impact for myself and for the clients. Okay, so these were all things that I kind of knew at the time as I was making the decision. This talk has forced me to articulate it a little bit better. So I thank you all for that. So moving now to wrapping up a little bit. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some transferable skills that I hopefully will be broadly speaking from academia to this or similar or maybe many other types of roles in industry, and then also some things that academia prepared me well for and some things that academia did not prepare me well for. So transferable skill number one. First, I've already talked about this a good bit. Teaching and mentoring led to developing those skills of teaching and mentoring led to effective coaching and education for clients. In fact, I may have said this already. I know I've said it to a few of you a few times today. My fundamental coaching philosophy, like the line number one, there are three parts. I won't give you the other two. But number one is that I believe that coaching and teaching are essentially two words that mean the same thing. They're synonyms. And I can unpack that more, but essentially that's the essence of it. I learned that. I think that's a transferable skill. If you have a teaching background and want to get into anything that's like consulting in general, I think that applies. Learning being effective in data analysis, and this is as close as I'll get to some content for you all, like physiology-related content. A big part of my job as it stands now that I haven't talked about in the talk so far is, in addition to classic nutrition coaching, I've also started integrating with this new role biomarker interpretation. So one of the things that I'm doing for clients is reviewing their blood work, their let's see, it's four things: blood work, stool, urine, and saliva, for a total of like something like 500 biomarkers. And so leveraging my background as a physiologist to be able to do that in a uniquely qualified way has been very helpful. So for those of you who are in the trenches, you're learning how to analyze data and think like a scientist and interpret data like a scientist and tell a story from it. That's a very valuable transferable skill. I've mentioned that and I'll reiterate it a little bit later, I'm terrible with sales and marketing. I'm awful at it, but I will say that grant writing and paper writing, but especially grant writing, writing a grant is essentially a sales pitch, is it not? So if you're getting practice and training in grant writing, then and you're trying to convince those reviewers that you're pitching them on the idea that you're the right person to do the experiment and you're in the right institution, the right environment to get the work done, you're doing a sales pitch. That would transfer over to anything in industry is much more directly sales. And then, yeah, as a PI, learn how to manage people. As a trainee, you learn how to work with people effectively, and that transfers to managing clients, to dealing with clients, to emotional intelligence with clients in a big way. So, what did academia prepare me for? In addition to those transferable skills, of course, critical thinking. This almost goes without saying, but I thought about leaving it out, but it's worth mentioning. You guys are becoming professionals in critical thinking. And that's the big thing about in my mind, it's the difference between graduate education and undergraduate education. Undergraduate education is largely based on rote learning, memorization, developing that, which has its place, but you also want to foster those higher level critical thinking skills, connecting concepts, stringing some ideas together, learning how to think more effectively. Becoming an expert in your field. You have that evidence literacy. You have the ability to evaluate, not just read a research paper and understand it, but you can also just determine the quality of that evidence. Is it a good paper? Is it a not as good paper? What is the consensus on a particular topic? Your clients, if you get a consulting role, you're going to be asked to kind of comment on that. Like, what's the state of the field on this or that? What do you think? The way that gets presented to me is like, hey, what do you think about fill in the blank of like the latest trend or whatever? Intermittent fasting is one I get asked about literally every day. And so forth. So that's going to transform. Of course, teaching complex topics simply. I really got my reps in on that as an instructor in the classroom. For those of you that have I would call it a good fortune to be in a teaching role now, working with your undergraduates, the better you can practice, you can explain something in a simple way that somebody that is not familiar with the topic can understand, the more mastery you have of that topic, right? So that's something that has absolutely, academia absolutely helped me with. And then this is one of my favorite ones, is I call it the skill of skill acquisition. I talked with, I think, the graduate students about this at lunch. The skill of skill acquisition is, it's like it sounds, but okay, so we talk a lot about in the academic space, what's your publication record? How productive were you? What'd you do? What'd you produce? What's your body of work? What's embedded in that, if you look at across a jumpy CV like mine, well, one of the things that I'm so happy that I did was I learned a whole bunch of different research techniques, right? And each time you do that, you learn a new skill. And every time you learn a new skill, then you've got another repetition in the art of learning new skills. And that in itself is something that would transfer incredibly well to an industry role where you're always learning new things. Like, so I mentioned the biomarker interpretation. That for me was a big, that's my latest and greatest new skill that I wouldn't say that I've learned it. I would not stand up and feel comfortable giving, for example, an informed lecture on the gut microbiome, for example, even though I'm working with clients in that area. I have experts that I consult with if I'm unsure about stuff in those situations, but I have developed competency in that area in a way that I feel comfortable prescribing is not the right word, recommending like certain dietary maneuvers. Basically comes down to eat more fiber most of the time in that particular example. But what am I saying? It's because I had been down that road of needing a new skill that I didn't have so many times before. It wasn't as daunting as compared to somebody that may be thrown into it for the first time, if that makes sense. And then what did academia not really prepare me well for? Again, the sales and marketing. Now, again, I mentioned that the grants game is that. I didn't really think about that much at the time. Maybe that's why I wasn't as successful in getting that big R01 grant. I don't know. It was more like, hey, this is the science and it's really good and you should give me money for it. I could probably do better with writing grants now, and because I've had this hands-on experience in sales, honestly, haven't had that thought until just now. But frankly, we don't get much training in that, and I'm not criticizing academia for that. It's not unless you go to take marketing classes or something. But that's something that I've just had to learn on the job. It's the same kind of thing. Brand building sort of. The brand building is a new concept to me. Again, I don't love that aspect of it, but when you put yourself out there, you say, I'm accepting clients, you're very responsible for building, for my case, whether it's a personal brand or partnering with brands that exist. That's just something that was not really talked about in my training days, or really even in my days as a PI. The business stuff, wow, this would be and I would get someone else to do this talk, not me, but that would be a good one for those of you interested in the industry. I've had a lot of learning to do on things like starting my own LLC, being classified as an S corp for tax purposes, how much freaking money that can save you if you get a good tax person to help you with that. 1099 contract work. I did not have any idea what I was getting into with all of that. I had to learn as I went. And the first year, I made some costly mistakes in that way because I tried to do it myself without a tax guy. And the next year I did hire somebody, and it's like, oh, wow, I don't want to think about what if I had hired you the year before. So yeah. And then, yeah, I kind of put this in a weird spot. What academia did prepare me for, the idea, and this is something that I actually found that I really like about working in the industry, is this idea of fast iteration versus the academic way of doing things, and I'm speaking specifically about the grants game. I've talked about this with a few of you all today. Just how long it takes to do stuff, to get things done, to make a decision on what you're going to do with the study, right? I would love to do a show of hands of like, how many of you students in the room have wanted to start your project, but you can't yet because you keep going back and forth with the PI on the proposal, and they're not quite comfortable with it yet, right? The industry, the business world doesn't work that way. You solve problems fast, and you solve problems that are presented to you out of nowhere and in unexpected ways in the form of like coaching. It's a big crisis email from a client, like, oh my gosh, I just found myself in my face in the bottom of a bag of Oreos. What do I do now? Like, and then you got to help them, like talk them off the cliff that day, versus things like, and the better job I do of that, I'm compensated favorably for, versus sitting around pontificating about specific aims for 2-3 months, and then submitting the grant, and then waiting 3 months to get the feedback, and then waiting another 3 months to put it back in. That part drove me nuts, to be honest. And some of you, I applaud you all for being able to do all that. But you're not really trained if you're trained as somebody that's good at writing grants, you're not really well trained for that aspect of the business world, for how fast it goes. Okay. And then, it's not so fair that I put this in the section of what academia didn't prepare me for, is this emotional intelligence with customers and clients. I'll say that we don't get any formal training in that from like our PIs, from our mentors necessarily, but at the same time, if you're in a good environment, then you do have good support from your PIs, from your fellow trainees and all that. But this is for sure, it's not part of my formal training, which is again like the emotional intelligence of like what to do, even if the science says to do this one thing. So for example, if I'm working with somebody they've got this goal of losing, say, 15 pounds of body weight, and they've lost 12, and they're at the last 2 weeks of their protocol, and they're really pushing hard, but they're stressed. Their first child is sick. The second one is being, rebelling against them. They've got all this job stress. So actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to increase your calories because you are going insane, right? So that's something, but that would be not by the book, by the numbers of it all, but something you just got to kind of use your judgment as a coach. That falls under that category of emotional intelligence. You don't really learn that, in the academy necessarily, unless you're taking some coursework in that, which most of us never did. Okay. And I think this is the last thing, some further lessons and reflections since leaving. Again, I've already touched on it. My key weakness in the academic arena was a quote unquote lack of focus. It worked in too many areas, and as a result, I think that's my reason for never having landed that major grant. And I bring this up again as something that if I had known about myself earlier, like that I actually like doing a bunch of different things as opposed to being so laser focused on one thing, which is at least the way the grant reviewers wanted me to be, then I may have been more open to exploring opportunities in industry earlier on in my career. But I would say go so far as to not maybe have a little bit of animosity towards the idea of going in the industry. I was so set on the academic track, especially as a PhD student, really even as a doctoral student. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to be a professor and forever. But that was kind of closed-minded based on how it actually played out for me. And then the lesson that I learned on the job with the consulting stuff is people actually, despite the credentials and all that good stuff and how good you look on paper, people don't pay for that. They don't pay for your knowledge. They pay for clarity, they pay for confidence, and they pay for care. I love the phrase, and forgive me if it's slightly offensive, but people don't give a shit how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is absolutely, I've never seen that to be more true. Yeah, I saw elements of it in teaching undergraduates in particular. I got some of the students who wrote course evaluation for me wrote some of the most wonderful things up until Dr. Padilla gave his introduction for me this afternoon. Some of those wonderful things anyone's ever said about me. And it's just because genuine care, right? And I think that goes a long way. And then lastly, I think this is the last thing. Academia taught me how to think, but coaching and consulting have taught me that the art and science have taught me the art and science of meeting needs and solving problems. Okay, kind of reiterating some of the same points that I've been making for the last 45 minutes or so. Okay, so that's my story. I hope that there were some, again, as I said in the very beginning, There were some this. I don't know that I'm going to leave you with anything. Oh, I'm going to go this route. I'm going to go. This now I have some clarity on what I'm going to do. But I do hope that is at least the reflection on how things have gone for me. So like I'd say fair to say one of your own from years ago now, how it's gone from the foray into the academic world and then an unexpected pivot out of it. I hope that's helpful for you all. Again, speaking to the students. For the faculty, I see most of you smiling, so I hope you weren't too bored. But yeah, that's it. And then I'll leave you with, oh my goodness, I forgot the last slide. Advice. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. If the last bit of advice, if you will, consider how the knowledge and skills that you're acquiring could be transferred to other arenas. Talked about that. Practice communicating your science. Look for and be open to consulting opportunities if they're presented to you. And then here's one, I can't believe I forgot this stuff. If you're on the job market, this is like maybe the last most tangible thing that I'll leave you with. For those who, if you're on the academic job market, carefully review the consulting policies for faculty. That's something that nobody ever told me. I got very lucky. University of Georgia had a very favorable consulting policy. As long as you kind of disclose what you were doing and agree to disclose on your papers that you had and grants applications that you're receiving consulting fees from whoever it was, they were like, yeah, it actually helps us. It promotes our reputation. Shows that we're sought after. It was very good. The two things you got to watch out for: conflict of interest, which is relatively obvious. You can't be kind of in bed with the people that are funding you personally. That's not good. And then two, conflict of commitment, which is what a university will care about. You got to make sure that your time that you're spending on your consulting work is not detracting from your duties that you're obligated to for your contract. So just read those sections of the policy documents. And then lastly, this is what I thought was coming next. In case you hated everything I had to say, hate me, here's some cute pictures of my son that I took in the last month or two. With that, I'll stop there. Hopefully we got a little time for Q&A. I went longer as you can. Well, classic academic. I went too long. So thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure to be here. Oh yeah, rooms like this and filled with students. I do miss interacting with students. I miss teaching. I miss, but I get to scratch that itch again with the work with clients. Again, coaching, teaching, I believe they're the same thing. And but it's a different demographic. It's more like my typical clientele is like the 35 to 45-year-old mom or dad that's stressing out with trying to juggle many things, trying to figure out where fitness and nutrition fit into their life. So I missed undergraduate students, graduate students, missed that demographic for sure. And I certainly miss, like I loved so much. I loved academic writing. I loved it. I shared with a few of you. I actually got to write a paper in the last couple of weeks that it's like a case study and I won't get into it all now because it's too long. I'd be up here for another 10 minutes talking about it, but I got to write a paper and it was like, oh my gosh, I missed this so much. And we're gonna wish me luck. We're gonna submit that next week, I hope. But it's a case study for one of our clients. But yeah, to answer the question, I miss a lot of it. But if I'm honest, if I look at does the bad outweigh the good? The good of the transition certainly outweighs the stuff that I miss. The negatives. So yeah. Saw the same person. Go ahead.
With the benefit of hindsight, if the opportunity brings you to Russia, president said, will you
the question, if I understood it, was if I had the opportunity to go into industry at the end of my postdoc instead of going into academia, would I have taken it? Oh man, I think you're right, John. I don't think I. But knowing what I know now, I would have absolutely entertained some idea and maybe saw. If I know what I know now, I would have maybe at least looked. I didn't know. I didn't. No, I wasn't even remotely. I would have that would be the thing that I would have maybe changed or been open to, would be at least open to consider it because there might have been some really cool jobs that were available at that time. I mean, 2013 was a different era. There was probably feels like there was more jobs. I don't know. But yeah, to at least have a look, see, maybe there would have been something that could have, but no, at the time, man, I was just like really, well, I'll put it this way. Dr. Padilla and I have a lot in common, how we're wired. And so especially at that time in those early days, man, it was, I wasn't necessarily open to much at all. So yeah, that is one of the main things I wanted to get across is like, don't let me be the example. And that's all. Yeah.
So, my curiosity is kind of coming with the new wave of AI
Sure.
coming in and all these, we can have ChatGPT and coaching
Yeah.
for us right now.
Sure can.
Does that make you question whether or not coaching,
It's-
does that security of tenure
Yeah.
kind of come back to mind? Like,
Oh, I don't think the second part. So the question is, what about AI basically? And
yeah,
isn't it possible that ChatGPT can just design a nutrition plan or a training plan for you? And it absolutely can.
a lot of people like they really appreciate having
Yeah.
a person to talk to.
That's right.
They
So
that.
I think there's a lot to discuss on this. Does it make me nervous? Yes and no. I mean, I've absolutely, frankly, I've lost business for it because whether it's ChatGPT or like, even within our own company, RP, they have two different products that are almost in some ways cannibalizing the coaching program. They have the diet coaching app and a strength training, a hypertrophy app. And it's all like these things at the end of the day, we were talking about last night, very much boiled down to numbers and math, which makes it very amenable to being programmed in lines of code. And so, yeah, there's like in some ways the math of it all could be done better by a computer, by a robot than it could maybe be by a person who's more prone to error. But what the apps do not know, again, is that emotional intelligence piece, is the knowing like, okay, the apps and I've seen, not to criticize it, but I've seen the apps and the magnitude of the adjustments that it makes. It can be very aggressive, where it's like as a human being, knowing the realistic the probability of somebody being able to implement certain changes to their routine. Well, there's no way in hell that this person's like the stressed out mom or dad of three kids, and one of them's freaking out or sick, and they're stressed out with work. I'm not going to take their food away. That would be intelligent by the math, but it wouldn't be intelligent for them as a person. So the way I put it, and you guys can use this if you like it. Yeah, AI, artificial intelligence is cool, but have you tried the real thing? That's kind of that's my response. But yeah, the other part of that too is I think like with many things, if we're not embracing AI, embracing ChatGPT, if we're not seeking how to leverage it to make our own jobs, our own lives more efficient and more effective, then we're going to miss the boat. And so, I mean, frankly, I use it all the time. I use AI technology all the time. One way I use it all the time, we talked about last night too, is this app is called Consensus. Have you guys seen that? Consensus.ai to search the literature. Oh my gosh, it does what it used to take me a month or more to say, hey, go find all the studies on this topic. Well, that was manually searching PubMed and then compiling your spreadsheet. It does it in 2 minutes. And now it does miss stuff. So you got to go back manually. Don't rely on too much, PhD students. But yeah, Dr. Parks.
Decision, right? The
Yeah.
transitions in life.
Yeah.
And so if you can, get a six-pack of beer and drive out of town, right? That's your emotion.
Yeah.
Deciding you're going to quit a job or whatever.
Yeah.
You can analyze it to death.
Yeah.
The positives and the negatives.
Yeah.
Or you could write down your mission and decide, is this new job consistent? How do you advocate? How did you make that decision?
Yeah. So how did I basically decide the big decision, which was to leave the tenure? Yeah, the process. It was definitely very careful. I wanted to have it started across my mind probably circa 2020 that it's like, wow, if this keeps going, I can't sustain this, number one. And so what does it look like to go one way or the other? And for me to leave the security of tenure, I needed to have almost like a backlog of 6 months of clients. And be confident that I could have, to sustain 6 months of my life with just that. And I was there or even better, to be honest. So that's where I felt comfortable in doing so. And so it was analytical, but I will also say if I was purely constrained or I'm not sure exactly how to put it, but purely motivated by that security aspect, then I still wouldn't have done it. So there was a bit of that, almost like what, just take a shot, take a 6-pack of beer and go drive off. And there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that. Like but it's more like just jump in. Like you got to stop analyzing and just decide, go. There was a gut feeling component to it. Is how I'd put it. For sure, there was a gut feeling component to it, but it mixed with the analysis. And I don't think anything's purely one or the other. There was a bit of an emotional component too, but I knew. Again, so there's the family aspect, and then the other thing is I was and remain extremely excited, which is weird to think about, but thinking where I came from, but very excited about this idea of the uncertainty, of that lack of security. That lack of security for me is extremely motivating, especially when you got a 3-year-old, or at the time of newborn. You don't have the failure is not an option for me. You know, you think about said this a few times today already. So, but you think about burnout. You know, I don't have I don't have the advantage, the luxury or privilege of being burnt out. I've got to work. I've got to provide. I've got to produce. I've got to and not just quantity, but mainly it's quality. Just do a really good job. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned phrase now. Intermittent fasting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You curious?
I'm curious. What do you think of intermittent fasting?
Oh, it has its place. Yeah. Intermittent fasting. What's the question? What do I think of it? So that's let's define terms. So intermittent fasting is the approach where you're strict eating windows, and there's a few different protocols out there, ranging from like within a 4-hour window, 6 hour, 8 hours. There's different ones. You know, there's some. Well, at the end of the day, so that's the term. We need to define our goal, what the purpose is. And so if we're talking about what most people come to me for is either weight loss or let's just say body composition change. And if you look at a time restricted eating protocol versus a kind of free range, like eat whenever you want kind of thing, no restriction. When calories are equated, there's no difference. There's no compelling reason to do an intermittent fasting protocol. If constraining your eating window helps you constrain your calories, then it may work. But it's not because of the timing. It's because of the fundamentals of physics of calorie balance. So that's my take on it. That being said, there's some data. I don't find it terribly compelling. I would defer to maybe some other experts in the room on this. There's some data that's there may be some effects of intermittent fasting on. There might be some hormonal effects of it, even accounting for the calories. Maybe some effects on like cellular senescence, maybe the beneficial effects to reduce cellular senescence, if I've seen that data. But I think it's mostly in rodent and cell models. Vicky, you're nodding. I'm not sure how much of that has held up in the human studies yet. Maybe I haven't paid as much attention as I should. But so I don't know a ton about it. But from what I do know from an energy balance standpoint, it's kind of, if it makes your boat float, then go for it. So.
But you don't use that if you're.
I do not. There's a small group of clients that I've used it for, and that is people who work in the medical field, particularly surgeons, who are tied up in surgery for long hours, and then it just kind of works with their life. And so they've kind of usually they've kind of be having experimented for themselves and tell me that they're going to do it anyway, whether I advocate for it or not. And then I look at their schedules, like, okay, yeah, you're going to be in surgery for 8 hours, then let's try it. And they swear, it's anecdotal, but they swear it helps with their mental clarity. And it's like, look, man, if that helps you with your mental clarity while you got somebody's like beating heart exposed, then let's do it. So, but yeah, but as a standard practice, I do not. Yeah.
So hypothetically, we're going to move on from this whole thing.
Mhm.
Where do you think so?
Oh, if what now? What's the last part?
That would be, I think.
Oh. Where would I go next? Oh, I don't know. One thing I haven't done is I haven't worked a W-2 job in the industry. And so there are things like kind of like I've seen a couple jobs. I haven't applied for anything, so I'm not like looking. But I've seen a couple jobs that look kind of cool. They're like content, basically subject matter expert. I'm going to butcher the names of them, but like content experts for like supplement companies. Somebody they're people with physiology backgrounds that can help basically communicate the research around the products to various stakeholders. This kind of like an MSL for, which would be another role, but kind of like an MSL for like a supplement company could be kind of neat because that'd be something that I probably could do. MSL, I've actually talked with several. I know, I mean, maybe some of you all know, medical science liaison. Very common for people in our physiology to transition to. I like the idea of that job, except for like the 75% travel. It's just untenable when you have a young family. Like I don't see, like I couldn't imagine doing that. So, but those jobs seem pretty neat too. But I would also consider a teaching gig at a university. I don't think I'd want to be I wouldn't be qualified for like a PI position again, based because I've been away. I don't think I'd want that, but a teaching position I would absolutely enjoy, I think. So not looking for that, but never, never, if there's one of my lessons from the day is never say never, right? So. Yeah. Yeah, Vicky. Okay.
In your personal coaching, or you use your personal search to like your emotional intelligence, like I'm thinking about the work that you've done with sex hormones and oral contraceptives and exercise performance and all, I mean, you've published 88 papers, so in all of that research, have you used that in making decisions with your clients?
So the question, if you all couldn't hear in the back, is have I had the opportunity to use any of my own content expertise in my work with clients? Anything that I've done research on. Yeah, it's really fun when it comes up, especially if somebody's like kind of like being a little bit kind of combative, like challenging me a little bit. Yeah, or people. So yeah, so like for a good example is clients will ask me sometimes, continuous glucose monitoring (CGMs) have become more mainstream. People use it, and so if client will ask me, what do I think of it? Can I help with it? It's like, well, yeah, that's something I've published a little bit on. That wasn't like a combative thing. That was like, hey, they send me their CGM data and I can help them interpret it. And that's a whole other thing. Like they're freaking out about spikes and it's like, okay, or lows or whatever. And I can help them like calm down a little bit. But yeah, there's other examples. A little bit of the sex hormone stuff. I would defer to my doctoral student, Alyssa, who did that work on detailed questions on that. But yeah, there's that has come up once in a while. That comes up where it's like, yeah, I can actually speak to that. Is how I put it, and and people they appreciate that for sure. Most of the time, it's not directly things that I've actually published on, but occasionally, often enough, and that's nice when it happens. Yeah.
Without me doing, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. It's been so much fun.